I tell you, there's no other center like Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. Oh my God. Have you ever heard or considered that phrase or thought about that phrase, you are a product of your environment? You've heard that, right? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree when we talk about comparisons. We're a product of our environment. And what does that mean, to be a product of? You know, we're absorbed in the conditionings or the sensibilities of everyone and everything that is around us. It's very impressionable. So they say that you are a representation of the people that you hang around with. You are a representation of that kind of sensibility thinking, that mindset that you are indoctrinated or domesticated in. I found this story that speaks to that, about being a product of our environment. And it says there's a young family who moved into their new home, which was next to a vacant lot. And one day a construction crew turned up to start building a house on that empty lot. And the young family's 5-year-old daughter naturally took an interest in all of the activity that was going on next door, and she spent much of each day watching the workers. Eventually, this construction crew, all of them, which you could describe as gems in the rough, more or less, adopted her as a kind of a project mascot. And they chatted with her, and they let her sit with them while they had their coffee breaks, and they gave her little jobs to do to make her feel important. And at the end of the first week, they presented her with a pay envelope that contained $10. And the little girl took this home to her mother, who suggested that she take her pay to the bank to start a savings account. And so when the girl and the mom got to the bank, the teller was impressed and asked the little girl how she had come by her very own paycheck at such a young age. And the little girl proudly replied, "I worked last week with a real construction crew building the house next door to us." "Oh my goodness gracious," said the teller. "And will you be working on the house again this week too?" And the little girl replied, "I will, if those assholes at Lowe's ever deliver the damn sheetrock." We absorb our environment. We are products of our environment. And so is it possible that there is a distinction between being a product of a spiritual environment and a physical environment? And what do I mean by that? And I say absolutely. To be a product of your spiritual environment is what we call inherent. To be a product of your spiritual environment means it's simply something that you came into this existence with. What we teach is that it's all God, or it's all intelligence, or it's all life, or it's all divine. It is all perfection. So if it is contained within the all, then that includes you and I. It includes all sentient beings, all of life. And so to say that we are a product of our spiritual environment, again, simply states the fact that what we are inherently, and by inherently, I simply mean the interwoven, undeniable, infallible truth of what we are, is constantly there. But to be a product of our physical environment is something that is a temporary status, regardless of, in spite of or until one's evolution. To be a product of your physical environment simply means that until the reawakening of your spiritual magnificence kicks in, you and I then begin to either stay stagnant in that or we make a return. I like to call it a spiritual homecoming. It's a reintegration. We begin to have the experience of returning to our power, to our awareness, to that divine nature. It is a reinstitution of your magnificent voice. And so The physical environment, to be a product of your physical environment, is then temporary and contingent upon your willingness to grow. Solely responsible upon your shoulders and in your heart and in your mind to synthesize and be willing to advance beyond what you were told or what you were raised or the way in which you were indoctrinated or domesticated. But your spiritual, to be a product of your spiritual environment, is a given. And so when I think about that, I think about the great American anthropologist Margaret Mead, who wrote some amazing things. And she felt very strongly about this. And she said, the notion that we are a product of our environment is our greatest sin. We are, in fact, products of our choices. And so when you think about that, when you let that resonate within you for a minute, it means that you and I have no limitation whatsoever other than that which we are in agreement with. It's very much in alignment with the beautiful sentiment that Karen spoke to us in our prayer, is that we are always at this choice. And so I love to look at the distinction between these two things. So you are a product of your environment. Spiritually, then, you are is present tense, and it is always present tense. Think about that. The you are of you is always present when regards to your spiritual product of environment. So you can't escape it. No matter how much you deny or resist it, it is there. You were a product of your physical environment is past tense. And again, that is the earthly situation that we are there. So to say that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree is only true if you decide that when you fall from the tree, you're just going to lay there and stay. But I don't know about you, but the apple of my being wants to roll down that hill and get as far away from that tree trunk as possible. Because I have the opportunity to then decompose and create seedlings and create something new and something larger and something more expansive than what I was a part of coming into this world. And it's not to make that environment or that situation wrong, but it's to see the beauty and the power of that inherency and to understand that you and I can come from any situation and elevate ourselves to new understanding and to new growth. To be at that conference, it really reminded me of what Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta is about. And what we are about is we are in the business of growing people. And by growing people, I'm talking about growing the self-awareness, the mindset, the consciousness of individuals who come through our door. We're about the business of growing that. And when you understand that, and as I understood that, watching Dana and watching Jafan, I thought, you know, there will come a time very shortly when they won't be here anymore because they will be in such demand because that apple needs to fall from the tree of SLCA and roll down into other territories because we shouldn't covet them and keep them because there is a world that is hungry for what it is that they have to offer. I watched it within our own organization. Our own organization was hungry for what it was that they had to offer. And so as sad as that makes me, and as much as I want to tell them, no, you can't leave. Anybody ever had somebody tell you, no, you can't leave? You're wrong. Stay here. It's safe. We can't do that. We can't do that. And you can't do that to yourself. You can't tell yourself, I'm going to stay here in this one mindset or in this position because it's safe. Because what? There is a whole realm of opportunity out there that is beckoning you to come and to grow and to expand and to experience something that you haven't even comprehended yet. And so if you were here to learn pipe fitting, you would take courses, but eventually you would need to go out into the world of business and practice your craft. If you were here to learn architecture, you would take all of the design and all of the math courses to get your license and degree, but the degree would be useless if you did not go out and build something. And so coming here and reacquainting yourself to your divine nature, to reawakening to your spiritual magnificence will eventually be, I'm going to say it, useless if you do not go out and practice expanding your consciousness. So taking under consideration that you learned that the environmental product of verbal and mental self-abuse is not going to make your life better, that the environmental product of scarcity behavior is not going to bring you prosperity, that the environmental product of your divisive rhetoric is not going to cultivate for you a loving environment, that the environmental product of grudge holding will make you ill, is all well and wonderful, but this information will not evolve you or grow you if you and I do not begin to practice the principles of changing the interior mental world of our being. And so when I say that what we are about is growing people, what we are about is hand-holding one another along the way in our evolution, so much so that eventually we can let go of those hands and allow individuals to fly. It's kind of like going to college. Can you imagine if you went to college and your professor said, "Stay, why go out there? Stay." Eventually you have to graduate. And so what I'm saying to you and I this morning is eventually you have to graduate into a deeper level of being. That's what the mission is. That's what it means for you and I to be a part of creating a world that works for everyone. It's easy sitting in this chair, but what you're needed is out in the world being the expansive thing, being the expansive catalyst, being the vessel for that. That's why I love that the barbershop is not just a barbershop. It's a salon of a different kind where people are coming together to talk about things and to remind themselves of their beauty. And every single one of us has the opportunity to do that in some form, in some fashion. And so one of the things then that we have to begin to consider is that if we're going to graduate into the action, I want you to become spiritual activists. And the thing about being a spiritual activist is you have a completely different take on the world of form. So it's not about going and fighting systemic issues. To fight systemic issues, if you understand law, what you resist. So if you're resisting or fighting against something, then the thing that you're fighting against is only going to expand. But the way that you begin to bring real change into a situation or into the consciousness and the evolution of our planet is to march into those situations understanding who you are. Who you are, hopefully you will learn here, but then you don't keep it here. You must go out and you must practice. And so we walk into those situations with a vision. We walk into those situations with clarity. We stare at it, like Karen said, we stare at those things unwaveringly, realizing that truth or the allness of that which we call God is in every situation, is in every candidate. Every candidate. Every candidate. And so, but isn't it remarkable that every 4 years we have this cycle of practice? And I'm telling you, if you jump on the bandwagon of finger pointing, you become a part of the problem. But if you stare at that, I will call it a circus. If you stare at that circus and you choose to see the good, and to understand that chaos is actually necessary in order to promote change. It's part of nature. Nature has its own internal chaos in order to bring about the next cultivation of change. If you see that, then you don't spend your energy and your time in the engagement of what is wrong, but you advocate for being the solution, and you do so first in mind. First, preparation within the mental construct that you understand unequivocally that the divine is inherent and existent in all things. You are a product of that spiritual environment, and that spiritual environment is everywhere. And then, armored with that, if you will, you go out into the world to advocate that from a conscious, visionary standpoint. A conscious visionary standpoint does not belabor or waste time on finger pointing and accusation. It takes the truth and it takes vision and it raises that to the platform. And you and I have the opportunity to do that all the time. And so the tools for reconciliation, for you to move from just accepting this, like studying to be a pipe fitter or studying architecture, to then go out and be those things. And so your number one tool for reconciliation is understanding that what you judge, you are. Isn't that fun? We say, you spot it, you got it. You spot it, you got it. So as we are condemning and laughing and joking and finger pointing, the only way, and I really want you to hear this, this is what Carl Jung called the shadow work. He said, if you are able to label and identify a particular trait within another individual, you have the same trait within you. And so when we condemn a trait of another, it is representational of an unhealed or unaddressed aspect within ourselves. So as I am freely condemning another individual, what I'm actually doing is holding up a mirror to the fact that that is the very thing that I must work on. And it's also, it's polarity as well. When I deeply admire a trait of another individual and am in awe of their knowledge and their intellect and their mentorship and the way in which they create a world that works for everyone, and I am in awe of that, it means that I could not recognize that quality if I didn't have that within me as well. So the choice is, which qualities of being do I want to cultivate? And so I cannot march into a history of my own making, my individual own making, if I first do not realize that one tool of reconciliation is what I judge I am. And that I am my brother's keeper, more or less I am my brother. I am my sister. And so there is a responsibility that runs deep. The responsibility doesn't necessarily mean that I go in physically and do something in the physical environment, but it means spiritually that when I recognize disharmony and discord across our world, I do not have the luxury to say that doesn't have anything to do with me. It has everything to do with each of us. I ran across this powerful quote, and it said, suppose there is a fire on the ground floor of an apartment building, and the person there calls out for help. A person living on the 10th floor cannot remain idle, saying, the fire is someone else's apartment, so why should I bother? Soon the fire may spread to the 10th floor. Likewise, we are all responsible for what is happening and for what will happen. But that level of call for action and that activism isn't about from the realm of the physical solely. It's about first being an activist within your mind. I hope you hear that. And I hope you understand the distinction of that. To reawaken to one's spiritual magnificence is to become reacquainted with, to come home spiritually to the inherent divinity of who you are. And to realize that that's the product that you are. That's the environment that has made you. That is the genius that has birthed you and I to do great things on this planet. And your great thing and my great thing and the person next to you's great thing does not have to be identical, nor should it be. Because the world in which you are working in and your circle of influence needs exactly you in your brand of being. And so we must understand that the time to begin this is not when you graduate, not when you've come to church for 2 years and then you can go do your work in the world, but it's your graduation day is every single day. Your ability to take these principles and begin to practice them is something that is being demanded of us in our world. Do you understand that? When you look at our world, doesn't it say, where are the light changers? Where are the light beings? Where are the change agents who are here to come and bring sanity and bring consciousness? That's you. That's you. So let's spend less time on Facebook and more time out into the physical arena doing that work. I was reminded of, do you know how things come along and they really, really have an impact upon us culturally? I think back several years ago, and remember those of you who may have read The Secret and how that impacted us globally, actually. And, I had to bless that because that was an introduction into the word spiritual and into the word law of attraction, for many people who never really understood that concept. And it let them know that their thoughts create their reality. And we've all understood that, but it started to be understood at a greater level. So you could say that there was a big cultural shift that took place because of that book. Well, there was an equal cultural shift that took place by a book in 1913. How many of you were around then? We have an extra cookie for you if you were. In 1913, there was this book that was published by this woman, and it was called Pollyanna. Any of you ever read Pollyanna? Maybe not. But it was a huge, huge cultural shift in our particular country. Pollyanna, if you don't know the story, is the story of a little girl, and it's an archetype story. And it's genius, the way in which it's told. And it's a little girl who is left without parents, but before her parents died, her father taught her that the way in which to get through life was to be able to look at everything and find good there. And so you may have heard the phrase, oh, don't be such a Pollyanna. And so it actually turned in sort of a negative connotation, like get a grip, be real, don't be a Pollyanna, right? But the truth of that is that Pollyanna was brought up, her physical, she was a product of her physical environment, but she was also a product of her spiritual environment, where her father indoctrinated in her, regardless of wherever you are, there is good there, and it is your job to seek it out. So her parents die. She's shipped off to the evil aunt. Kind of like Cinderella, right? Same archetype story. She's shipped off to the evil aunt who resents her, who resents her sunny disposition. Darkness doesn't like when the light is invading it very much. But Pollyanna is relentless in her commitment to what she called the glad game. The glad game. And so she began to teach this or practice this among this remote town in Vermont. And everywhere she went, and there's story after story of how she started to influence all of the residents of this Vermont town. The last one who refused to cave in was the aunt. And the aunt would punish her. She would lock her up in an attic room without any rugs or any decoration, and Pollyanna would stand by the window and marvel at the beautiful scenery outside. The aunt wouldn't feed her, and she would only give her bread and milk, and Pollyanna would go, oh my God, I love bread and milk. Thank you so much. Which just infuriated her even more, right? And so she refused to let go of this. And then as the story goes on, Pollyanna has an accident where she loses the feeling in her legs and she's no longer able to walk. And she goes into her own dark night of the soul. Any of you had a dark night of the soul? No matter how conscious you are, no matter how much of the glad game you participate, there are those moments when, what? We have our human experience. So Pollyanna is having her human experience. And suddenly, she's beginning to doubt the fact that this glad game actually is effective. And you know what happens is that the ripple effect from her begins to ripple back to her. And all of the citizens of this town start to come and visit her and thank her profusely by the way in which she has changed their life. And the aunt observes this, and in the cold, steely heart of that aunt, she finally sees the good that her niece is able to give. And somehow, some way, the doctor that is trying to help Pollyanna's legs falls in love with the mean aunt. And then the doctor finds a way to take Pollyanna away to have her legs restored, and the world is brought anew again. Right? So there can be a sequel. But you see, this thing about the glad game is a tangible thing. It's something that you and I could call a rampage of appreciation. Everybody's going, I love the principles, David, but how do I apply them? The application of those things are constant to us. If I tell you that you are a sacred, divine vessel and instrument, a thing of value and worth, and that you are needed in the world and that your creativity matters, when I tell you those things, one of the things then for implementation is for you to own that and to embody that and to act like that. And to begin to notice the speech and the language and the thoughts that are inconsistent with that and begin to alter and change those. And so a rampage of appreciation is a tangible thing whereby you and I are driving and we are in traffic. And instead of focusing on the traffic, you go, oh my God, I am sitting in a cage of steel. This amazing thing. I have no idea what makes that, works that, but somehow I turn a key and it works. What a world I live in. If only the settlers had this. This would be amazing. And it moves on these things that are rotating and are tires. And my God, this is fascinating. And it takes me from where I am to where I want to go. What an amazing time to be alive. I have clothes on my back. I am digging this song on the radio. I have food in my pantry. Oh my God, I'm driving. Look, the warm weather. Look at those Japanese blossoms that are coming out on that tree. Isn't that magnificent? Oh my God. Look at the sun. Oh my God, look at that billboard. Oh, that's funny. Oh my God. And I start to constantly direct my attention and be appreciative of the things that are in front of me. And I do that deliberately. And you see, law is constantly working. Meaning that when your attention is focused on what is working and what you are appreciative of, by the reciprocal act of law, law then presents to us more things that are working and more things to be appreciative of. Not that they weren't there to begin with, it's just that you and I were not in alignment with that. But now we become aligned, now we become aware. If I realize that I am wanted and I am valued, then I do not spend time with who isn't interested in me. And I let them go. And I stay in beautiful expectancy of the right and perfect channels for my good and for my creativity. And when I stay adhered to that, then it comes. And you're sitting there and you're going, easier said than done. And you know what? You're right. To a degree. In the infantile stage of working with law deliberately, you are absolutely right. Easier said than done. But you will not know what it means to take the training wheels off of your consciousness until you begin to ride and ride and ride and ride and ride this law in such a way that you no longer say easier said than done, and you channel your inner French person and you go, but of course. Because it makes total sense. Because that's the way in which law works. And so this week, if you want practical application, you've got practical application everywhere. Play your own version of the glad game. Channel your own inner Pollyanna. Pollyanna got a bad rap. Because being a Pollyanna is a great thing. It's a conscious being. Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta is here to grow conscious beings. It is here to challenge you to stop wallowing in the smallness. It's here to say right to your face that your pain is not special. That's always a warm and fuzzy. And what do I mean by that? It simply means that if you hold your story in a place of sacrosanct, in a place of sacredness, if you hold that story of what happened to you in this impenetrable box of sacredness, which becomes your special pain, and you think no one will understand, no one has ever experienced what I have experienced, then you, my friend, get to be right. But if you understand that by doing that, you and I rob ourselves of the very thing that we say that we want, which is our freedom, which is our prosperity, which is our wholeness, which is deep, abiding friendships, which is a world that craves and hungers for your special talent. If you don't allow yourself the ability to take your pain and let it be a part of your past and evolve into the inherent product of your spiritual environment, then you and I remain stagnant. And you can come here as long as you want, and the snacks will be great, and the music and the dance will be fabulous, but nothing in your life will ever change. And then, I'm not supposed to take things personally, but that would hurt my heart. And I know that it hurts the heart of you when those that you love don't get it as well. And it's not our job to proselytize and preach and to make them wrong. It is our job to simply create a container, a safe container, whereby individuals can come and become reacquainted. The message, reawakened to their spiritual magnificence. That, my friend, is the reason why we are here. That is the value of what community means. That's what calls you. That's what makes you get up sometimes when you don't want to get up and come here because something says, no, I need to be there. Because you will find something here, something within this existence of these conscious beings that is exactly what it is that you need to remind you of your truth. And so stay the course. Do not give up on yourself. Do not let the divisive rhetoric of our nation and our foolishness deprive you or deplete you of the idea that everything is working together for our good. And, that's the operative word, and do your part in action and in speech and in evolution, because you are what the world is waiting for. And so it is. Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.